It started with one sheet of paper that sat in a drawer for the better part of 30 years, and the man who finally took it out of that drawer was not William, and it was not Charles either. It was the man Camilla was married to before any of this existed, before the wedding, before the title, before the crown ever came near her. Andrew Parker Bowles asked for a private meeting with the king, put that paper on a table between them, and walked back out into the countryside afternoon. 6 weeks later, Prince William signed his name to a single page of household administration, and by 9 the next morning, the palace had gone cold, with nobody willing to say out loud what had changed. If you're new here, hit subscribe before we go any further, because this story moves fast and the ending sits nowhere near where you'd expect it to. Quick thing before we get into it. I'm Jack, and I spend my time digging through everything that moves around this family, the filings, the household records, the stories that got buried before anyone finished asking the second question. I've spent the last 2 weeks inside this one, and by the end you'll know exactly what William put his name to, who handed him the reason, and why Camilla's future stopped belonging to her on an ordinary Tuesday morning that started with nothing more dramatic than internal post. The first sign came as a memo. One page circulated through the internal correspondence system, the kind of document that normally gets a glance, a file folder, and no further thought from anyone. The staff who read this one did not file it. They read it twice, and some read it a third time, and then they looked at each other with the expression people wear when they understand that something permanent has happened and nobody is going to explain it to them. The memo covered Queen Camilla's household finances, her travel budget, her staffing allocations, and her personal disbursement accounts, the whole administrative machine that lets a queen's office function as an office rather than as a woman with a diary and good intentions. All of it went under immediate suspension, pending what the page called a review of expenditure. No timeline arrived with it, no context, no explanation offered to anyone who read it, and the name on the authorization line at the bottom did not belong to Camilla. It did not belong to Charles either. It read the Office of the Prince of Wales. William had signed it himself. A review of expenditure is not an investigation. It carries no legal weight and contains no accusation. In royal terms, a review means somebody wants to look at the book, and that's the whole of it. But inside a household where nobody except the sovereign himself had ever reached into the financial arrangements of a queen consort, that boring little word landed with the weight of a door closing. By 9 that morning, the corridors had gone into the particular silence palace's produce when something serious has happened and no one has been cleared to talk about it. Staff moved with more care than usual and conversations got shorter, while the surface rhythm of the morning carried on. The trolleys, the schedules, the polite good mornings. Underneath it, something else was moving at a different speed entirely. One absence made that silence louder than anything else could have. Camilla wasn't there. She'd had a routine engagement on the diary for that morning, a short visit to a charitable organization she had backed for years, the kind of low-profile appearance that generates 2 photographs and a paragraph. Somebody canceled it, not moved it, not pushed it a week with apologies, but canceled it with no statement and no explanation to the organization expecting her. Her office door, which on any other morning would have stood open by 8, stayed shut that Tuesday. Her personal secretary arrived, checked the corridor, and left again without going in, and a member of her household staff came up to collect her morning correspondence and found the tray sitting outside untouched. She always took those herself, always. In 20 years of service, that staff member had never once seen her leave her own letters in a corridor, and William had been seen leaving a private meeting with 2 of his legal advisors at 7 that morning. By 8:15, the memo was moving through the system. By 9, the palace understood, without anyone saying it, that something had happened which nobody was going to be able to undo. What nobody in that building had worked out yet was where any of it had begun, and who had handed William the reason to end it. I want to say something about William here, because you cannot make sense of what he did next without it. This has never been about Camilla as a person. It has always been about Diana. He was 15 years old when he walked behind his mother's coffin with the whole world watching him do it, and a boy does not come back from that as the same person. The quiet control, the reluctance to explain himself, the habit of moving only when he is certain, all of it comes out of the years when he watched an institution decide his mother's version of events was inconvenient. Charles had known since the previous evening, and the people closest to him would later describe those hours as the hardest stretch they had watched him go through in years of service. No raised voices, no visible collapse, none of the outward signals people picture when they hear the word crisis. It was quieter than that. A man had been handed something he could not unknow, and he spent the whole night sitting with it alone. He canceled dinner that night, and anyone receiving a short message from his private secretary would have read nothing into it, but the people who know his habits will tell you the evening meal, taken privately with one member of staff in attendance, is the one rhythm he protects no matter what the day has thrown at him. By morning, the people around him noticed the quality of his composure, the stillness of a man who has made a decision he cannot take back and now has to carry it through a full day of engagements while smiling at strangers. His eyes, one aide remarked weeks afterward, looked like the eyes of somebody who hadn't slept and had decided sleep was no longer the question. Catherine said nothing publicly, and that surprised nobody. She worked out a long time ago that the most powerful thing a person in her position can offer during turbulence is the absence of anything that can be used against her later. The people watching her that morning picked up something past ordinary restraint. She was present, attentive, correct in every visible way, and completely unreachable, and the distance she held was protection. Of William, of the children, of the space around a decision her husband had made. Princess Anne turned up to a scheduled engagement that morning and completed it without deviation, because of course she did. Observers noted only that her exchanges with staff ran shorter than usual, her answers clipped in the way that with her signals preoccupation rather than temper. She has spent enough decades inside that institution to read its silences without help, and she read this one and kept her mouth shut. The staff felt it hardest, the way staff always do. 2 members of Camilla's household office arrived that morning, and a senior administrator told them their schedules had been suspended with no further instruction to follow. They sat in a small anteroom for 2 hours, and neither of them asked the other the question they were both chewing on because nobody in that building had been cleared to answer it. None of them knew yet. The sequence had not started inside the palace at all. It started 6 weeks earlier, with a meeting arranged through channels that left no record anywhere between a king and the man his wife had been married to before him. 6 weeks before that memo, a message moved through an intermediary, avoiding the correspondence systems that govern how senior royal figures talk to the people around them. The message traveled through a retired equerry, a man who had given 3 decades to royal service, who knew both households in the way only long proximity produces. The message itself was short. Andrew Parker Bowles wanted a private audience with the king. The request on its own wasn't unthinkable. Those 2 men are not strangers and never have been, and they have moved through overlapping worlds for 50 years. Military circles, the social geography of the English countryside, they were never close. They were the kind of not close that 2 men arrive at when each has made a private peace with a situation neither of them chose. And this is not speculation about their relationship. Reporting around the coronation in May of 2023 noted that Andrew Parker Bowles was given a seat inside Westminster Abbey while his former wife was crowned beside the king. That's the arrangement these people had made with each other. Civil, functional, and public, this request differed in 2 ways: the channel it came through and the condition attached to it. Andrew Parker Bowles asked specifically that the meeting not be logged, no entry in the official diary, no staff in the room, no record of the conversation beyond whatever the 2 of them chose to carry out of it. In a household where nearly every interaction involving the king passes under at least 1 layer of documentation, that condition was strange enough that the equerry carrying it paused before he delivered it. Charles agreed to the meeting, and the few people who learned about it afterward described his agreement as something sitting between reluctance and inevitability. He had understood from the shape of the request that whatever Andrew Parker Bowles had been carrying all these years, he had decided he was done carrying it alone. What that produced instead was acceptance that the conversation was coming either way, and that his only choice was whether he met it head-on or waited for it to find him through somebody else's front page. They met on a Wednesday afternoon at a private address in the countryside, a house belonging to the retired equerry himself, offered up with the discreet generosity old networks, produced without anybody discussing terms. Andrew Parker Bowles said whatever he said in that room, and it stayed between the 2 of them. though his staff still talk about the way Charles looked when he came back that evening. He looked like a man who had been handed an object he recognized on sight and had been hoping for a very long time that he would never have to hold it. Last week, I covered the story of William stripping Camilla's family of their home and the reason the lawyers found when they went looking. A lot of you wrote in asking the obvious follow-up, which is what happens when that same method gets pointed at Camilla herself. That's today. And the answer starts with what Charles did the moment he got home. He did not summon her through the usual channels. No message went through a private secretary. No entry was added to the official diary. He sent word through one member of staff who was given nothing to write down, saying he wished to speak with her that afternoon. The informality was the signal, because inside a household where even the most intimate exchange between senior family members moves through administrative structure, taking that structure away said something no message could have said plainer. She came within the hour. He had chosen a room they both knew well, a smaller sitting room on the upper floor used for conversations that need distance from the working parts of the household. Just two people and a document on the low table between them that Charles had put there before she arrived and had not touched since. Camilla looked at the document before she looked at him. One sheet, a photocopy rather than an original, carrying a date from the period straight after her divorce from Andrew Parker Bowles, years before anybody had put the words marriage and Charles in the same sentence, and the dates matter for what comes next. Camilla and Andrew Parker Bowles announced the end of their marriage in January of 1995, calling it a private matter, and the Washington Post ran a piece on it that same month. The divorce went through in early 1996. She married Charles in April of 2005. That paper came out of the gap in between, the decade when nobody was watching her, when she had no title, no protection, and no official standing of any kind. The contents, which Charles later described to his most senior advisor in the broadest terms he could manage, related to a private financial arrangement she entered into during that period, an agreement put in writing, and the writing suggested she had used knowledge picked up through her proximity to royal circles as leverage inside a negotiation that looked entirely private on its surface. On its own, it carried no legal consequence. Nobody was going to a courtroom over a photocopy from the mid-90s, but in the hands of anyone with the context to understand it, that page told a story about judgment, about the distance between what a person does privately and what the public is asked to trust. Charles asked her one question, not an accusation, but a question shaped with the care of a man who had spent 6 weeks working out exactly how to hold what he'd been handed. He asked her to help him understand what the arrangement had been. The silence that followed ran long enough that its length turned into its own answer, and then Camilla spoke. She did not deny that the document existed, and she did not challenge whether it was real. What she did instead was go straight to reframing. The arrangement had been mischaracterized, she told him, and the context had been lost somewhere along the way. The thing on that page that looked like leverage was, in her telling, a private negotiation between two people untangling a complicated shared life. Charles listened, and he did not interrupt her once, and when she finished, he did not respond to a single word of what she had said. He asked her about Andrew Parker Bowles instead, specifically whether she understood why Andrew had chosen to bring this forward now, after so many years of choosing not to. That question settled into the room and sat there, and Camilla, a woman who has spent decades learning to work the exact ground between what gets said and what gets meant inside this family, gave the one answer that told Charles everything the document itself had left open. She did not say that what Andrew Parker Bowles had shown him was untrue. She asked why he would do this to her. Nobody has confirmed what Charles decided during the rest of that night. Watch what he does inside the next 48 hours, because the paperwork he set moving says more than any statement out of that palace ever could. The meeting ended without resolution, and the absence of a resolution was itself the resolution. Charles did not tell her what he intended to do, and when she left the room, he did not pick the document up off the table, which meant that as she walked out, that page stayed exactly where he had put it, waiting. Within 48 hours, the palace's internal financial review office received new instructions, and those instructions did not come through Camilla's household. They arrived through the king's private secretary, addressed to the keeper of the privy purse. I should tell you who that is, because most people have never heard the title. The keeper of the privy purse runs the money, holds overall responsibility for the sovereign's financial affairs, and every June his office publishes the Sovereign Grant Annual Report, which tells the country how much public funding this family used. For the period covering 2025 to 2026, that grant sits at £132.1 million. The man receiving this memorandum was no clerk. He was the most senior financial official in the building. The memorandum requested, in the careful language institutions use when they want something to look routine, a comprehensive review of all expenditure associated with the Queen Consort's office over the preceding 3 years. The keeper of the privy purse had held his role long enough to know that a request of that nature, arriving through that channel with no prior discussion, was not routine administration. He turned up, read the memorandum, and asked 2 questions. The first covered the scope of the review. The second covered who else had been told, and the answer to that second one told him everything the memorandum had left out. William had been included. Nobody notified him afterward, and nobody briefed him as a courtesy to the heir. He sat in the conversation that produced the memorandum, his office copied on the instructions, his name sitting in the authorization chain as a participant rather than an observer. In 20 years of royal financial administration, that man could recall no precedent for the Prince of Wales occupying that position in a matter touching the Queen Consort's household. If you want to understand why William had the standing to sit in that chair, look at 2022. Elizabeth died on the 8th of September that year. William became Duke of Cornwall the same day, and the Duchy of Cornwall, the estate that has funded the heir for close to 700 years, passed straight to him. He runs one of the largest private estates in the country, with his own legal team and his own view about what this family can afford to be caught doing. The legal side got handled with the same care. Senior counsel was brought in to advise rather than to investigate, and the difference between those 2 words is enormous. An investigation implies a conclusion waiting at the end of it. Advice implies a wish to understand the edges of what the institution can do inside its own structures. The advice came back precise. Everything described to counsel fell inside the sovereign's absolute discretion over royal household finances. No external body needed involving, and the institution could handle the whole thing within itself. Within was the word the lawyers used, and within was the word that mattered. Within is where this family has buried every difficult thing it has ever had to bury, and William knows it better than anyone alive. He watched his mother try to speak from inside it and get nowhere, watched the household close ranks around a version of events that suited the building, and he came out of that childhood with one conviction that has never moved. If the machinery is going to protect somebody, he decides who. The machinery had already started turning, and William had still not shown Camilla the full extent of what he had put together. That confrontation was coming, and when it came, it happened somewhere far less private than either of them had planned for. The changes started quietly, the way the serious changes inside a royal household always start. No announcements, no statements through official channels, no briefings handed to the press, just small alterations to the ordinary texture of daily life that mean nothing without context and everything to people who have spent years learning to read that institution through its details. Camilla's engagement diary went first. 3 appearances scheduled across the following fortnight, a hospital visit, a reception tied to one of her longest-standing patronages, and a ceremony where she had been expected to represent the crown came off the calendar with no replacement dates. Her office sent the organization's short notes citing scheduling conflicts, and none of them received an alternative date. A scheduling conflict that produces no rescheduling is not a scheduling conflict. Somebody has removed her. 2 members of her household office were reassigned, and the palace handled it with the efficiency it saves for personnel changes it would rather nobody examined. No formal announcement went out. Their desks were cleared over one weekend, and their building access changed the following Monday morning. Colleagues asked and got one answer, that both individuals had moved to support roles in other departments, a description vague enough to confirm nothing and deny nothing. The official website changed its language around her patronages inside the same week, and the edits were subtle enough that most readers would scroll past them. Phrases positioning her as a current working presence inside each organization got softened into language about her historical association. Present tense swapped for past. That's the sort of edit a communications team makes when somebody tells them to create distance and does not tell them why. Then came the letter from the keeper of the privy purse, addressed to the relevant financial institutions in the formal register of Royal Administrative Correspondence. It placed an administrative hold on the accounts tied to Camilla's household operations, not a freeze in any legal sense, but a hold. The distinction existed on paper and nowhere else, because the effect was identical. The accounts through which her office paid for staffing, travel, and the daily requirements of a working royal household could no longer be touched without additional authorization, and only one office could give it. William's office, a queen consort's office, does not run on goodwill. It runs on a functioning account that pays the person who answers her letters, the driver who takes her to a hospital opening, the team that builds her schedule 6 months ahead. Cut the authorization, and none of that stops overnight. It starts requiring permission. Every request goes to a desk belonging to her stepson. She woke up that Thursday as the queen, and she could not sign off her own travel without a young man in another building agreeing that she should have it. A member of her personal staff arrived that Thursday morning and found the correspondence tray outside her private rooms untouched for the second day running. She had always collected them herself, whatever else the morning held. One meeting still had to happen, and unlike everything that came before it, nobody arranged this one through intermediaries. William asked to see her directly. She did not refuse and was already in the room when he arrived. William came in and she did not stand. She stayed in the chair she had picked, not the one nearest the door, but the one beside the window with the afternoon light behind her and the full length of the room between herself and wherever he was going to sit. William sat. He put nothing on the table between them, no documents, no files, none of the visible product of the weeks of work behind this moment, and leaving it outside was a statement of its own. He spoke first, telling her he had not asked for this meeting to go back over the evidence or to deliver any further consequence or to continue an argument neither of them had formally started. He had asked to see her because there was something he needed her to understand that no memorandum could carry. And then he told her about the silence he remembered from his childhood. Not the silence of the arguments, since he had been too young for most of that to register as conflict. The one he remembered was the other silence, the particular quiet of a woman who had learned over years that the institution around her would not carry her voice no matter what she put into it. She had worked out that the protection she was promised came with conditions nobody ever wrote down, and she carried that on her own because there was nowhere inside that world to put it down without paying for it. He was not equating the two situations. He said that part clearly, and Camilla, who had been watching him with an expression that gave away almost nothing, gave away something at that. A slight shift in the set of her shoulders, the particular adjustment of a person who has prepared for one conversation and understood a beat too late that she is sitting in a different one. He said only that he had watched what silence protected inside that institution and what it cost the people it was meant to protect, and at some point he could not name, he decided he was not willing to extend that silence any further on the grounds that extending it was easier. Camilla did not answer straight away. She spoke a moment later, and she said something none of the people outside that room will ever hear repeated, because William has not repeated it, and neither has she. The thing that came out of that room differed from the thing that went into it. Neither of them called it a resolution, and neither of them mistook it for warmth. What passed between them was a mutual acknowledgement of what had always been true, finally said out loud into a space that could hold it. The door opened 20 minutes later. William left first. Camilla stayed sitting by the window a while longer, and outside, the palace carried on with its afternoon, while somewhere past those walls, the story had already started moving toward people who had not heard a word of it yet. The first report landed at 11:43 on a Thursday morning, not in a tabloid, and not through the kind of anonymous tip that produces a breathless paragraph halfway down a gossip column. It ran in the financial pages of a broadsheet, a precisely worded item filed by a correspondent who covers institutional finance and knew exactly what she was looking at. 3 paragraphs. It named nobody, and it described, in the restrained register financial journalism, uses when it wants to survive a lawyer's read, an administrative hold placed on accounts associated with a senior member of the royal household, pending an internal review authorized at the level of the heir apparent's office. By 1 o'clock, every major outlet in the United Kingdom had it, and the speed did not come from the item itself. It came from what every editor in the country understood the item to mean once they had read it twice. A financial hold, a senior household, authorization from the heir apparent. The gaps between those phrases were not gaps. They were the story. Constitutional experts got calls inside the hour, and their answers split along a line that had less to do with the facts than with what each of them believed the facts signified. One camp framed it as a sign of structural health, a system correcting itself from the inside. The other was less comforted, pointing out that a financial suspension authorized at the level of the heir apparent rather than the sovereign has no obvious parallel in the modern history of the household. The name Andrew Parker Bowles appeared online before it appeared in any formal report. Somebody joined the thread, a reference in a follow-up item to a private meeting requested through unofficial channels several weeks earlier, and the connection moved across social media with the velocity information. Gets when it feels like a discovery. Inside 4 hours, his name was the most searched term attached to the story, a man who had spent years at the comfortable edge of royal coverage, waking up at the center of a question the public had decided it wanted answered. Why now, after 30 years of silence, and why him? The palace released one sentence through its communications office at 3. The household does not comment on private financial matters. One sentence, in a situation that had already generated several hundred media inquiries, and the brevity said what a longer statement could not. By evening, the question had stopped being what happened. The question had become what a single public appearance, already on the calendar for 3 days later, was now going to look like. That service had been booked for months, a national commemoration at one of the older churches in the city, the kind of occasion where the presence of the royal family is constitutionally weighted. Nobody can cancel it without producing a statement, and nobody can attend without producing photographs. Every detail of it becomes language. The cars arrived in separate sequences, and the photographers clocked that first because the logistics of royal arrivals at occasions of this weight are never accidental. The separation was small, and on its own, it produced no obvious image. But the people who have covered this family long enough recognized a deviation on site. Inside the church, the seating did the rest. Charles and Camilla sat in the same row because protocol required it, but the distance between them, a space that would normally close by itself as the row filled, stayed open. Nobody filled it. The result was a space visible in every photograph from the press gallery, visible in the pool camera footage, and by the following morning on the front page of 4 national newspapers with no caption required. William sat with Catherine several rows forward and did not look back once during the service, his attention fixed on the altar with the stillness of a man who has decided that the most powerful thing available to him in a room like that is to be present, composed, and unreachable by whatever is gathering behind him. Catherine sat beside him wearing the expression she has perfected across years of public life, attentive, warm at the right moments, revealing nothing she had not chosen in advance to reveal. The image that traveled furthest was not a confrontation. Nobody confronted anybody. It was a photograph taken during the final hymn, a wide shot capturing the whole royal seating area, and in the center of it, between 2 pairs of hands resting on order of service cards, sat the empty space in the pew. Neither pair of hands reached toward it, neither pulled away from it. 50 years of one of the most argued about relationships in this country, and it came down to 18 inches of empty wood that nobody was willing to cross in front of a live camera. Camilla left before the formal recession finished. A smaller security detail than her position would normally require walked her to the car, and that adjustment is the kind of operational change the public never notices, and everybody inside the institution understands within the hour. The household had recalculated her position. The car pulled away, the service carried on, and that photograph was already moving across every platform that carried it, saying all the things the palace's one careful sentence had declined to say. Nobody marked the change with any ceremony, which fits how this institution has always handled its serious internal shifts. No announcement, no acknowledgement, just a gradual redistribution of small details that piles up over months into a new reality. The palace worked out centuries ago that the most durable changes are the ones nobody ever has to explain. Camilla moved to a country residence outside the immediate orbit of the working household. No official communication described the move as anything other than a personal arrangement, and the distance it created, geographic and institutional and symbolic all at once, went unnamed. Her patronages kept her name on their lists, but the invitations that used to arrive from the palace, coordinating her appearances at their events, started arriving less often. Then they stopped. The organizations adapted the way organizations do, saying nothing in public that might oblige the palace to respond. Charles carried what he was carrying the way he has always carried the hardest things, visibly only to the people who know where to look. His public schedule ran without interruption, delivered with the consistency he has spent his entire life training himself to produce, regardless of what is happening underneath. The people around him noticed one thing: the energy he has always brought into private conversation, that quality of curiosity about whoever is standing in front of him, thinned out in the months that followed. Not gone, thinned, the difference between a man who is fully present and a man who is present enough. William said nothing publicly about any of it, and he did not need to. The authority he now carries inside that institution belongs to a man who got tested against a costly decision and did not move. That kind of standing does not announce itself. It exists, and the people around it adjust, and after enough time the adjustment becomes the new normal. Andrew Parker Bowles was never publicly connected to any of it. His name stayed in circulation for a few weeks, then the coverage moved on, and he went back to the comfortable edge where he has always lived, present in the historical record, absent from the conversation, having done the thing he decided to do. I keep coming back to the shape of it. A woman spent 50 years working her way from the outside of that family to the inside, through a divorce, through 2 decades of the worst press in Britain, through a wedding the institution had to be talked into. She got the title, she got the seat, she got the crown put on her head in Westminster Abbey in May of 2023 with the whole world watching, and Diana's son sat in that abbey and watched it happen and said nothing. He was not waiting to make a scene, he was waiting for paper. She seems never to have accounted for one thing. The institution she spent 5 decades getting inside is the same institution that taught William, at 15 years old and walking behind a coffin, exactly how it handles a woman it has decided is inconvenient. Camilla learned to work that machine from the outside. William inherited it, and he has the one thing she never had in 50 years of trying, which is the power to decide who the machinery protects. The thing left standing when the noise settled had no clean name. Nobody in that family would call it a rupture, and nobody would call it a resolution. It is the condition a family arrives at when something true has finally been said out loud that cannot be unsaid. The palace doors never closed on Camilla. They opened less often, and then less often again, and that turned out to be the crueler version. A woman who spent her whole life fighting her way into that building ended up as the only person inside it who has to ask a younger man's office for permission before she can spend a morning as herself. She kept the title. She lost the thing the title was for. Thanks for watching. If this one gave you something, like the video and subscribe, because I am working through the rest of this paper trail, and there is more of it than anybody at that palace would like.